Invitations are a universal symbol of gathering and celebration, something almost everyone has held in their hands at least once. One afternoon, seeking an escape from the monotony of their quiet town, Sarah and her friends slipped a reckless invitation into the mailbox of the long-abandoned Hollowton Manor. To the spirits of the manor, the note read, the words a silent plea to the void. You are invited to our gathering this Halloween. Should you feel the need, you have permission to possess my body. Forever. Snacks will be provided. The girls laughed at their own absurdity. Just then a chill wind whispered through the ancient trees as they deposited the reckless message into the corroded mailbox. Laughter, sharp and brittle, echoed in the fading light, a laughter that was not from them, an attempt to mask the genuine unease that had begun to settle in their guts as they fled the manor's looming shadow. While they knew the gesture was foolish and that most neighbors would think them mad, the manor was the only source of intrigue in a place where nothing ever happened. After all, the manor had belonged to Old Man Hollowton, who nobody knew if he was alive or dead. He may get a good laugh out of the invite. But to the townspeople, the manor had stood empty for years. Surely Old Man Hollowton was not there to read it. This was some small-town fun for you to enjoy. Invitations are meant to be fun, but for Sarah, this familiar object took on a sinister edge when she found a pristine white envelope lying on the worn steps of her home a few days later. Curiosity superseded caution, and she ripped it open. You're invited to the scariest party of the season, the title stated in elegant crimson script. The card inside beckoned with stark simplicity. Join me tonight at the cursed Hollowton Manor. Party starts at 8 p.m. Don't be late. Sarah was taken aback, a chill tracing a path down her spine. Was this a joke because of the invite they left a few days ago at the manor, or something more sinister? The Hollowton Manor was notorious. She had heard chilling tales since childhood about those who entered its grounds, tales that never spoke of anyone returning whole. Old Man Hollowton was not a forgiving man, but would he go this far? Some who had entered the manor said Old Man Hollowton did not live there anymore, but strange creatures and spirits now haunted the manor and its grounds, lurking in the shadows. She half laughed it off, just a cheesy Halloween gag, surely? But the unease lingered until her phone began to buzz. It was her friends. They had received the exact same invitation and were excitedly making plans. Sarah voiced her doubts, reminding them of the local lore. Stories are called stories for a reason, right? Her friends countered, dismissing her fears. Sarah reluctantly agreed to go, convincing herself that the chilling tales were just local superstition designed to scare children. Tonight, they would prove the legends wrong. The old house stood on a hill overlooking the town, its darkened windows like vacant eyes. Local legends spoke of a presence within, something that whispered names in the dead of night and moved things when no one was looking. Despite the warnings, Sarah and her friends dared each other to spend a night inside, armed with only flashlights and a misplaced sense of bravery. The heavy double doors of Hollowton Manor yielded with a long, agonizing groan, but as the four girls stepped inside, the scariest party of the season was nowhere to be found. The grand foyer was a tomb of dust and stillness, draped in gray cobwebs that hung like funeral veils from the ceiling. They exchanged confused glances, the beams of their flashlights cutting through a darkness that felt far too thick for an empty house. Had they misread the time? A quick check of the crimson-inked card confirmed they were exactly on schedule. We must have beat the host to their own party, one of them joked, though her voice lacked conviction and died quickly in the vast hollow space. To shake off the awkwardness, they decided to sit on a cluster of sheet-covered furniture in the center of the drawing room. They settled into an uneasy silence, the silence of a place that hadn't heard a human heartbeat in decades. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the house began to breathe around them, a floorboard sighing here, a window shutter rattling there, as if the mansion were slowly waking up. However, as darkness fell, the house settled into an unnatural silence, the kind that presses in on you, making the smallest sounds seem amplified. A floorboard creaked upstairs, then another, a slow, deliberate pattern moving toward the landing. The air grew cold, carrying with it a faint scent of damp earth and something else, something cloying and sickly sweet. The whispering began, not in a language they understood, but a low, guttural murmur that seemed to come from all corners of the room at once. The light from their flashlights danced nervously across the walls, revealing only peeling wallpaper and forgotten furniture draped in sheets. But in the periphery of their vision, fleeting movements could be seen, shadows that didn't belong, shapes that shifted just beyond the reach of the beams. A door upstairs slowly creaked open, then slammed shut with a bang that echoed through the house, followed by the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floorboards. Panic set in. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the scent of decay intensified. They huddled together, flashlights trembling, the brave facade completely gone. They knew then that the legends were true, and whatever shared the house with them was now fully awake, and it knew they were there. In the dim light of the old house, the creature's form was a nightmare realized, a grotesque mockery of anything natural. Its skin was the color of bruised parchment, stretched so tight over a skeletal frame that the sharp ridges of its ribs and the pulsing of dark, vine-like veins were visible beneath. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, its limbs unnaturally long and spindly, ending in hands with tapering needle-like fingers that twitched with a life of their own. The creature's most unsettling features were centered on its face, which seemed haphazardly assembled. Its eyes were large, blood red, and lacked pupils, glowing with a faint, sickly yellow light that pierced through the darkness. A thin, lipless mouth stretched too wide across its face, revealing rows of jagged, translucent teeth that looked more like shards of broken glass than bone. As it moved, its joints made a dry, clicking sound, like dead branches snapping in a winter wind. It didn't walk so much as skitter, its movements jerky and unpredictable, making it appear as if it were flickering in and out of existence. A faint, metallic scent of old copper and decay clung to it, filling the room long before the creature itself emerged from the shadows. The horror lay not just in its appearance, but in its silence. It watched with a predatory stillness, its head tilted at an impossible angle, as if listening to the frantic beating of Sarah's heart. This creature was a master of the uncanny, a being that looked almost human enough to be recognizable, but was twisted just far enough to trigger a primal, bone-deep terror in anyone unfortunate enough to see it. As the creature lurched forward, its movement was a sickening, rhythmic click-clack of bone on wood, like a stop-motion film brought to life in the worst possible way. Sarah tried to scream, but the air in the room felt thick and heavy, as if the creature's presence was literally suffocating the light and sound around them. One of her friends, paralyzed by terror, didn't move as a spindly, needle-fingered hand reached out from the dark. The touch was not sharp, but freezing, a bone-deep chill that seemed to drain the very warmth from the room. With a sudden, violent jerk, the creature didn't strike. It leaned in, its lipless mouth hovering inches from her friend's ear, and exhaled a long, rattling breath that smelled of copper and old, stagnant earth. "I have permission," the creature growled. "Permission for what?" Sarah thought. The flashlights began to flicker and die, one by one, as the creature let out a sound that shattered the silence, a high-pitched, metallic trill that vibrated through their very teeth. In the final, dying beams of light, they saw the creature's large, red eyes widen with a predatory intelligence, its head tilting at a sharp, impossible 90-degree angle. It wasn't just watching them. It was studying their fear, feeding on the frantic rhythm of their hearts. The shadows in the corners of the room began to stretch and detach from the walls, flowing toward the creature like ink in water, until the floorboards beneath them seemed to vanish into a bottomless, swirling abyss. "Run," Sarah finally managed to gasp, but as they turned to flee, the heavy oak door didn't just slam. It fused into the wall, the wood grain twisting until the exit was nothing more than a solid, seamless barrier. The whispers returned, now loud and overlapping, a chaotic chorus of voices they now recognized as their own, screaming in agony from some distant future moment. The creature skittered onto the ceiling, its weightless form defying gravity as it loomed directly above them, its glass-like teeth clicking in anticipation. It began to descend, not by falling, but by lengthening its spindly limbs until its face was level with Sarah's, the red glow of its eyes drowning out the last of the darkness. Just as the light vanished completely, a hand grabbed Sarah's shoulder. Not the freezing grip of the monster, but the frantic, sweating hand of her friend pulling her toward a hidden crawlspace behind a rotting bookshelf. They tumbled into the narrow, dust-choked tunnel, the sound of the creature's clicking joints growing frantic behind them as it realized its prey was slipping away. They crawled blindly, the smell of decay replaced by the scent of ancient, dry wood, until they burst through a small hatch and out into the biting cold of the night air. They didn't look back until they reached the town lights, but as Sarah glanced at her shoulder in the glow of a street lamp, she saw 3 perfectly circular, frost-white bruises where the creature had first touched her, and she knew that whatever was in that house had not finished its hunt. The 3 frost-white marks on Sarah's shoulder did not fade, they began to tunnel. By midnight, the skin around the circles had turned translucent, revealing the rhythmic pulsing of black, ink-like fluid beneath the surface. As she sat shivering in her bedroom, she heard it, not from outside, but from within her own walls. A dry, splintering click echoed from the back of her closet, followed by the unmistakable scent of wet copper. The creature hadn't stayed at the house, it had traveled through her, using the marks as a doorway. She turned to scream for her parents, but her jaw locked with a sickening pop. Looking in the vanity mirror, Sarah watched in paralyzed horror as her reflection began to move independently. Her reflected self leaned forward, its face stretching and distorting until her eyes became vast, blood-red orbs that lacked pupils. The reflection didn't scream, it smiled, revealing rows of jagged, glass-like teeth. Slowly, her reflection reached out, its fingers lengthening into needle-like points that pressed against the surface of the glass from the inside. A frantic scratching erupted from under her bed, and the shadows in the room began to detach themselves, rising like thick oil to pool around her ankles. The 3 marks on her shoulder burst open, not with blood, but with thin, spindly white filaments that latched onto the wallpaper, anchoring her to the room. She realized with a jolt of bone-deep terror that she was being hollowed out, her bones snapping and elongating to fit a new, grotesque architecture. She wasn't dying, she was being rebuilt into a cage for the thing that lived in the dark. Just as the last light in the hallway flickered out, a long, skeletal hand, tipped with needle fingers, reached out from her own shadow and gripped her throat. The creature's face finally emerged from the closet, but it no longer looked like a monster. It looked exactly like Sarah, only its head was tilted at a sharp, impossible 90-degree angle. It leaned in, its breath smelling of stagnant earth, and whispered in her own voice, "Your invitation was most gracious," the creature hissed, the voice a dry rattle of clicking teeth. "And this vessel, it is exquisite. Truly, I thank you." A cold, suffocating weight settled over the room as the entity's shadow stretched across the walls like spilled ink. Do try to enjoy Hollowton Manor, Sarah. Explore its depths, listen to its walls. It is your home now, and your prison until the end of time. As the world dissolved into a sickening crimson blur, Sarah's limbs betrayed her, skittering up the cold stone walls with a rhythmic, insectile clicking. She was a passenger in her own flesh, her mind paralyzed in a silent, suffocating scream as her skin hardened into something ancient and wrong. The darkness of Hollowton Manor rushed to greet her, no longer a ruin, but a sanctuary of nightmares. She saw through eyes that were no longer human, witnessing the crawling horrors that had waited decades for an invitation. Both reckless pleas had been answered. As her consciousness was devoured by the skittering malice of the creature she had once feared, one final agonizing realization flickered. She was no longer the guest, but the host. Sarah was gone, only the creature and the manor remained,